I've started.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar Simulation Showcase Series Urban and Outdoor Thermal Comfort, presented by IBPSA-USA EPSI Committee. My name is Ria, and I will be your moderator for today. While we wait for everyone to settle in, here's a quick rundown on what to expect. Today's session will be recorded and available through the IBPSA-USA YouTube channel. If you missed last month's simulation showcase, you can watch the recording on your YouTube now. If you have any issues hearing the presentation, please try calling in by phone instead of using the computer audio. You can participate by posting questions and comments in the Q&A tab. At the bottom of your screen, questions will be viewable to all attendees, and there is an option to submit anonymously if you prefer. I'll relay your questions live to each presenter following the end of their presentation. And for those who don't know us, we are EPSI, the Emerging Professionals and Students of IBPSA-USA. EPSI is a peer group under the IBPSA-USA focused on professionals with less than 5 years of experience in the building performance industry. We connect early career analysts with resources, networking opportunities, and leadership insights to help you grow your career. We're always looking for more energy enthusiasts to join us, so please scan the QR code and join our community. Moving forward towards the simulation showcase, this is our third installment of our webinar series. This series highlights the work of emerging professionals and students using building simulation to tackle challenges like energy efficiency, indoor and urban thermal comfort, decarbonization, and indoor environmental quality. We invited a large group of students and early career professionals to submit their submissions based on projects. The selected participants are presenting like a 10 to 15 minute spotlight session followed by audience Q&A. And our reviewers will assign scores based on our review criteria, and the 3 finalists will be recognized on the SimBuild 2026. Today's session is the third in this monthly series running through February. So we do have 2 webinars coming, like one in Jan and one in February. So please also register for that in the future. And the presenters will be showing their work of real world design solutions. Our topic for today is the urban and outdoor thermal comfort, and we have 3 amazing presenters in line. So without any further ado, I would like to call our first presenter, Quoc Dang.
Hi guys, thank you for the introduction. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Ria, can you accept my share request?
Yes.
Okay, sharing screen now. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Quoc. Today I'll be talking about our recent work at KBF, title called Climate Twin, a microclimate digital twin for urban outdoor comfort. But before we start, I'd like to talk a little bit more about myself. I start my journey in working in the built environment with an architectural background. After a few years in practice, I want to take a more active role to address the climate crisis in the AEC industry. Thus, I shift my focus toward the environmental performance aspect of the industry, where I try to expand my skill set in sustainability and technology. Right now, I'm working directly in this intersection of my 3 interests as an environmental performance software developer at KBF. About KBF, we are a global architectural practice with 8 offices and more than 400 designers across the world. Most of our projects located in some of the most dense urban area, and we committed to design net zero carbon buildings by 2030 and enabling a future climate with under 1.5 degrees Celsius warming. When we overlay the IPCC map marking the 2 to 4.5 degrees Celsius increase scenario, we can see that majority of KBF projects are in some of the most impacted region by this prediction. Therefore, we all need to keep in mind this reality when we design. Because of this great challenge, in our KBF project, we aim to leverage technology to enable a decarbonized and resilient urban future. Um, to serve as a foundation, before we dive into our main tool today, I want to provide some context about our work with the Municipal Art Society of New York in starting in 2019. Ma's work to advocate for a more nuanced way to look at development policy in the city relevant to sunlight beyond just shadow versus no shadow, uh, as is right now. And we work with them to investigate two space at the heart of New York City, close to each other. These two spaces are close to each other, but yet drastically different, which is Town Square and Bryant Park. Because of the different characteristic of these two space, it makes a significant difference in offer an individual thermal experience for a visitor. For instance, in towns where being surrounded by high albedo surfaces in the middle of the concrete jungle, it have much higher thermal index compared to Bryant Park, where why a visitor in Bryant Park is being surrounded by lower albedo surfaces, in addition to the beneficial shading effect of the tree canopy around the park. Um, and further, when we compare other area with similar size and conditions, such as the St. Mary Park in Brooklyn, the difference in harmful radiation in St. Mary Park versus Bryant Park show um, that Bryant Park is being properly shaded and have less extreme heat stress compared to St. Mary Park. Um, and and indeed, Bryant Park is one of the rare pleasant space um, in New York City. When we look at these two images of the park, viewer can easily agree with such assessment. Um, However, in order to analyze this quality in our design for the spaces uh, that we typically work on, we use Universal Thermal Climate Index as a metric, which take into account the environmental condition, heat exchange model, and thermal body model to arrive at the feel-like quality represented in the thermal sensation index. Although this is a highly technical and powerful analysis, it uh, um, because of this expertise required to conduct and read this analysis, it's kind of alienate the audience who doesn't have much expertise in this field. And a question often come up is how do we communicate thermal comfort effectively to our client and the wider audience? We face this challenge of explaining environmental urban modeling metrics, while our client and the public tend to understand the qualitative aspect, similar to the image that you can see on the right. Um, this challenge led us to um, developing climate twin, a seeing this analysis and metrics are required by certain expertise to read, run, and access. We aim to address this issue by making our analysis more accessible through a web app platform. In addition, we want to be a model that deliver a near real-time microclimate analysis based on live weather forecasts and measure weather data. The base of our microclimate model is built upon the UCCI foundation, which require variable like air temperature, relative humidity, airflow velocity, solar radiation, and surface temperature, which all come from, some of them come from our weather forecast weather data services at 15-minute interval. Um, and then because of this, our analysis are update automatically when the condition change. They are then fit into our model with many pre-compute components such as CFD, view factor, and delta T estimation to deliver a final UTCI metrics that is both highly accurate, more sensitive to the context, and less computation time. Um, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the pre-compute and the model that we built that fit into the final UCCI model. The first one is the localized wind condition that is refined with the CFD-based approach. Instead of relying on the course forecast wind speed and the direction coming from the weather forecast, we use we use the forecast data to select and scale from the library of 16 pre-compute CFD scenario. This provides localized wind estimate that reflect the actual build condition in the park. We then compute the total radiation model daily with the forecast diffuse and direct value uh, from the weather API. The effect of the building context is also captured through the specialized delta T scenario model. We collect the portion of the exposure to high albedo surfaces, vegetated area, and other architectural features um, that are represented throughout this scenario that influence the long wave radiation field and overall thermal load. Once we have the view factor, we use it for our estimate delta T between the air temperature and the surface temperature for mean radiation temperature calculation. Um, 2 years ago, our team conducted a study to find the correlation between the mean radiation temperature and the view factor from urban context at different spaces around the cities. This study formalized into a model to estimate the delta T based on the view factor at different space. This database is then fit into our microclimate model that Climate Twin use. About tech stack, the middle end server powered by Node.js acts as a collector of data, uh, um, model definition, and JSON result file. At the end of the day, the middle end will receive weather data coming from our weather forecast weather services for the next day, and then send this request to the random compute server hosted on AWS to run our outdoor thermal comfort crossover definition. The result is then returned from the back end to the middle end as a JSON format for short-term storage, and then passed to the front end for visualization whenever there's a user access our website. By bringing together forecast data, CFD enhanced wind analysis, and advanced radiative modeling, the system produced a UCCI value that reflects how people actually experience outdoor space at the neighborhood scale. The full pipeline, the digital twin of the microclimate of the park, with a more realistic UCI estimate and in near real-time fashion. So this is a screenshot of the app with 3 different values to avoid expertise jargon. The fuel light temperature is another way that we talk about UCCI. The effective comfort label allow the user to input their custom comfort value so that it filter out weather space that they would feel like too hot, too cold, or just right. And then the last metric that we feature here is the projected comfort duration, which tell us at a certain spot how long it would remain comfortable in the next 15, 30, 45, or 60 minutes. And as a privilege of having a park as a backyard, we are able to quickly collect additional measurement to validate and improve our model. So this is our data, my validation effort in this past Saturday, November 29th, 2025. The forecasts say that the air temperature is 41 Fahrenheit degree with mostly sunny condition. And this is the result that we can see from the app, comparing to the globe temperature that I measure. So you can see that across all different conditions or different spaces around the park, the field light temperature coming from the climate twin is relatively close to what I measure on site. And for the next step, we would like to validate this our model even further with more extensive site measurement. In addition to that, we also develop a voting feature to allow the public to crowdsource their voting preference, so we can continuously improving our model. Resulted in the digital twin of this outer space, having the public to understand and familiarize with this effect. At the very least, KBF New York office has a tool to find the best spot in the park to have lunch, which is the original goal when the project first started as a 2 weeks holiday hackathon between Christmas and New Year last year. We see this as a powerful instrument for designing a more resilient urban space as city face intensifying heat wave and urban heat island effect become more pronounced. The ability to predict and communicate microclimate condition in near real time become critical for public health and urban livability. Uh, Lastly, I want to thank my collaborator um, in KBF, Environmental Performance Team, and U Urban Interface Team. Um, I would feel really fortunate to have working a lot amongst this talented group of people, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your presentation. It was wonderful and extremely insightful. We have a couple of questions for you. So what are the required resources and time to deploy such a workflow with CFD and MRT in a new location, and who are the target user of such a data?
So the target data here, I think once we validate once we went through enough validation process and we feel confident with our model, we plan to launch it to the public and duplicate this process to more outdoor spaces around the city. And the with the goal to use it to educate the general public first of all, and then our future client about our expertise to conduct such complicated analysis. And can you repeat the first part of the question?
What are the required resources and time to deploy such a workflow with CFD and MRD in a new location?
I see. So for a new location, we would then need to run the 16 direction CFD and then having to build a new 3D model context and and that's all. That is all we need.
Okay. The next question is this work publicly available?
Um, um, we plan to publicly publish this in the future. Right now, it's just is we try to still keep it closed off within internal KPI for the validation purposes.
Perfect. I will keep an eye out for any questions, but thank you so much for your presentation, and we can now move to our next presenter for today, Manya Sharma. Over to you.
Yeah. Thank you. I will just quickly check if my screen is visible to everyone.
Yes.
Hi. So just to introduce myself, I am Manya. I am a sustainability analyst at Corgan with their Eco team, and I hold a master's in sustainable design from Carnegie Mellon, and I am also an architect from India. So today I will be walking you all through the current pressing issue, which is the urban heat island effect. And my study specifically focuses on the city of Delhi. And I'll be talking about the simulation tool, the software that I've used, which is NBMet in this case. So just to give a background of what the urban heat island effect is and how the world is facing such high global temperatures and global warming. So people around the world are already witnessing the epic heat waves and global warming, and it has significantly impacted the urban population, especially the outdoor workers, immensely. And when we come to think about it, we think of who is being affected and what are the health risks. So, as I said, it's the urban population, the urban poor, who are extremely vulnerable to the heat and have almost no access to air conditioning and can face a lot of issues when it comes to health risks like heat stroke, respiratory illnesses, dehydration, etc. So this is a map data by IPCC, which talks about how more than 150 cities will be facing high temperatures within the coming years. And it's interesting to see how more than 100 of them are actually located within India. So this is a glimpse from some information by WHO from 2024, which talked about how more than 100 people were killed due to extreme heat temperatures in Delhi. And the highest temperature that was recorded that time was 51 degrees Celsius, which is extremely high for a human to actually live in. So, just to talk about a couple of impacts of urban heat island, it's lack of less thermal comfort, a lot of heat related illnesses, increased energy consumption, which means a lot of economic burden for the population living in those areas, and a lot of poor air quality and water quality. So, this is a map that sort of showcases the daytime and the nighttime temperatures in Delhi. And it's interesting to see this because, as we see during the daytime, the high temperatures are scattered, but at the night, the temperature seems to accumulate during the extreme built up areas. That happens because all the materials, all the surfaces tend to trap the heat during day, and then it slowly starts releasing during the night in the urban environment. So, this is something interesting that I stumbled upon while I was looking at Delhi on Google Maps. I also stumbled upon Pittsburgh, and it's interesting to see how, at the same scale, both the cities, even though they are geographically different, they have such a different look to themselves, and we can clearly see that Delhi is a concrete jungle at the moment. So, just to give a glimpse of the literature that I went through, I first began with reading about urban heat island effects, all the data that was already there, and I identified the intensity and the current scenario within India on urban heat island. Then went on to researching about the mitigation strategies, and I had identified that a lot of research and papers talk about how there is a requirement for us to be using some techniques and strategies to mitigate the urban heat island effect. And further went on to deciding on using biophilic design strategies as well as some nature-based solution strategies. So, just to talk about the issues that I identified during the study, during my research, were that there is a lack of green infrastructure in Delhi, unsuitable building materials, limited adoption of cooling strategies within the city, and lack of data. Hence, the gap that I went ahead with was that these studies do not provide quantifiable data for India. And is something that I wanted to begin with because if we don't have solid data to prove it in terms of bringing these strategies forward, it's useful to inform the policymakers better and also the urban planners and urban designers that so and so is the reduction that we can see using these mitigation strategies and would be extremely helpful in the urban context. So I further went on to deciding on using some nature-based solutions that I'll be elaborating on later. So the methodology that I went with was I first began with some GIS analysis in ArcGIS Pro, where I looked at land surface temperature data as well as some vegetation data within Delhi, picked a site that I wanted to work with, then created went through a lot of literature, looked at the mitigation strategies, and finally decided on using the green strategies for my simulation study. Also created a small taxonomy of plants that are natively found within Delhi and could be used as a resource for anyone who wants to have a look at it. And finally, the most important step, the simulation software that I used was NVMet and Grasshopper Morpho. Grasshopper Morpho was a plugin. It is a plugin that has been built up for NVMet. So that's where I modeled and then further continued with my simulation within NVMet. So identifying temperature ranges. Through my GIS analysis and the land surface temperature data, I could find that 40 to 50 degrees Celsius was the land surface temperature that was faced within Delhi, which is extremely high. And as we look at the vegetation analysis, it could be seen that mostly the vegetation was sparse with just some shrubs or grasslands and not not very much of dense vegetation. Hence, I chose a site within Delhi, which is the Sadar Bazaar, which is a very old market in Delhi and is highly populated. So it experiences a lot of people coming and going. This is just a glimpse of the market, and as we can see, there's there's a huge lack of green infrastructure within this area. So, further moving on to the existing neighborhood conditions and building typologies, the neighborhood mostly had materials like concrete, brick, loamy soil, and asphalt roads. And the building typologies that the area has are residential, retail, and mixed use. So the strategies that I went ahead with. So first of all, the strategies that I explored on the left are all extremely important when it comes to mitigating urban heat island effect. But I further went on to defining the green strategies that I was going to use because I also wanted some strategies that could act as retrofitting strategies for already built up area. And this market is an old space with extremely old buildings. Hence, I chose to work with green roofs, green walls, tree canopies, and planting strips. So this is a small taxonomy of native plants that can be seen abundantly in Delhi and throughout the year. So as I went ahead with defining where I wanted to use these strategies, all of them have various positives to themselves, but all of them together help in temperature reduction. So finally, moving into the simulation phase, I first set up the grid in Grasshopper Morpho, which is an extension for NVMet, where first I designed my model in Rhino and then set a simulation grid defining the area that I wanted to simulate the model within, and then assigned the buildings to the modules, assigned the streets, the soil, and then the trees. So, just to walk you through the script and how I built up and what went into creating the space, the simulation environment, I first began with the generation of the model grid for NVMet, as I talked about before. Then I set up the location and the coordinates in NVMet using the weather file data for Delhi. Then this is a very important step when it comes to material configuration because a lot of research goes into it as well on deciding what are the materials that you want to move ahead with, what are the existing materials, and configuring them separately. And then finally assigning these materials to the model for further setting it up, setting the simulation environment up within NVMet. So the whole model was configured here and then transferred into NVMet. So after the simulation ran in the software, the data that we could see, the data that we could see was in the existing scenario where I worked with 4 major types of materials that were highly seen in this area were concrete, brick, loamy soil, and asphalt. And as expected, the temperatures were extremely high. The temperatures ranged from 38.5 degrees Celsius to 44.2 degrees Celsius. And further, I went on to applying green roof within this area to see what the whole temperature reduction would be. And something to note here would be one of the limitations for this study is within the extreme left, the west of the model, which is the one of the edges of the study, the model itself, the temperature was not considered the data was not considered for this study because there's a limitation to the model and it needs to further be expanded. Hence, the green roofs, when applied, I had applied the green roofs to all the roofs to see what the maximum reduction could be seen. within the study, and the urban air temperature actually dropped by 1.16 degrees Celsius. And for those who might think it's just a degree, 1 degree Celsius does matter a lot when it comes to uh, an urban environment facing such huge amounts of temperatures. And then, after applying green walls, the temperature significantly dropped even more to 1.76 degrees Celsius. And when I apply tree canopies within the urban environment, the urban air temperature dropped by 2.5 degrees Celsius, which is as expected, as we know that urban trees and tree canopies help shade the area a lot and give a lot of cooling effect, which was extremely vital for this study, and especially the area that I was working with in Delhi. And then lastly, the planting strips, which came on the roads. So as I talked about the existing scenario in Delhi, it consists of asphalt roads. And these roads actually do tend to melt during the extreme temperatures, which is extremely harmful, and as well as radiate a lot of heat in the urban spaces. So applying planting strips on the sidewalks tremendously helped in reducing the temperature, which was a reduction of 2.6 degrees Celsius. So at the very end, I curated all of these strategies together and designed a model where all of these strategies were combined to see what the maximum impact would be if all of these strategies were taken together. And from the baseline to the optimized scenarios, the temperature difference was seen around 3 to 4 degrees Celsius, which is extremely great for an urban environment to see the temperatures drop by such huge amounts. Um, so as um, so as I move forward, first of all, the impacts of this study were that from the existing scenario to the optimized scenario, as I expected, that the temperatures would drop. But more importantly, it was important for me to gather that data, which showcased that these are the reductions so that these temperature ranges and the temperature drops can be taken forward to the policymakers and to inform the urban planners and urban designers better that this is the reduction that we can see, and these strategies must be applied in these urban spaces. Um, Hence, I would just like to say that NVMet is a great tool for anyone who is willing to work on urban spaces or urban environment, especially heat. I think that the software provides such an amazing real-time data that it's extremely reliable and useful for these. And I am still exploring the software further, and it has a lot of potential to it. And any sort of feedback is welcome. And I would like to take this study forward. So I'm interested in knowing if anyone has any interesting ideas of how could I approach this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for an amazing presentation, Manya. We have a couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
Since UHI intensity typically peaks at night, have you evaluated these strategies under nocturnal conditions to determine their cooling potential and identify which interventions are most effective?
Um, hmm. So my study has currently just focused for a particular hour in the day and not really targeted towards the nighttime temperature, but that is something that moving forward, I would like to actually explore and see how that works. So I think the study needs to be taken forward, and it's important for me to explore all the different types of scenarios. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you implement the strategies to 100% of surface area, say walls or roof, or considered a fraction of surfaces to look at a realistic scenario?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Did you implement the strategies to 100% of surface area, say walls or roof, or considered a fraction of surfaces to get a realistic scenario?
Right. No, for this particular study, I have applied it to all the surfaces just to see what the maximum reduction would be. And moving ahead, it's because we cannot apply it to all the roofs or all the walls in a realistic scenario. So further would be to see what are the targeted spots that these strategies can be applied to, and then sort of assess what the temperature reductions would be.
Perfect. Last question. Did you do any validation studies to confirm the reliability of the simulation?
I haven't done any validation studies, but a lot of existing data and existing studies are what I have used to sort of validate the data that I've received, because a lot of these studies have already been done for other countries, for example, the States or anywhere in the Netherlands and a lot of other countries. But for the scenario of India, I think it was important to see and explore and get this data, because it's we don't have a lot of data available on our hands, and it was important to bring this out there. So I am all open to see how I can validate these studies even further. Maybe try planting some trees. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Manya.
Thank you.
I will keep an eye out for more questions, but let's call our last and final presenter. Krupa, over to you.
All right, hi. I'm experiencing a little bit of a lag, so I'm gonna try and make this as smooth as possible for everyone. Okay, start by sharing my screen. Oops. Okay. Ria, can you confirm if you can see
I
my
can see your screen, but it's on full screen now. Perfect.
Okay, perfect. So hi everyone, I'm Krupa, and welcome to my webinar on applying building simulation in real-world projects. I'm an architect with a master's in building science and a passion for evaluating building performance outcomes using simulation methods, which I've been applying in my sustainability consultant role in the last couple of years. This simulation-driven research is inspired by a real-life tree planting effort by the USC Urban Trees Initiative, and sort of the thoughtful conversations around how we might measure the impact of cooling strategies in LA, as residents in numerous neighborhoods are exposed to high levels of heat stress caused by a lack of adequate tree canopy cover and subsequently due to a lack of shade. I will walk you through my process, which essentially entails using NVMet to conduct microclimate simulations to assess the heat mitigating potential of a shade tree planting intervention against a base case scenario. I'll be using the UTCI as the metric to quantify outdoor thermal stress. I'll be walking you through the CFD model setup and share the weather data and analysis periods which are selected for simulations. And I'll also dive into the results, some custom visualization and quantification plots and graphs that I developed to kind of succinctly get to the point of what exactly we're measuring and how you can present that to groups, without confusing people, basically. And then for discussion, I've I have a few points and insights which I want to share about what site design and material interventions you might adopt to further mitigate heat um, in a treeless neighborhood, essentially. So again, the research objective is essentially to quantify the reduction in UTCI by comparing a base case scenario where you just have a 5% tree canopy cover and an improved scenario where where groups have essentially wanted to add like 183 shade trees to sites, to neighborhoods, and they want to see what the heat mitigating potential is of that shade tree planting intervention. So one thing I want to clarify is this layout was designed by the landscape architects that are involved in this sort of tree planting intervention. And what I'm interested in is not just the UTCI, the reduction in UTCI under one tree or at one grid cell of this setup, but actually what the site-wide UTCI reduction is. So basically what the impact of the layout, the planting layout is on site-wide UTCI distribution. And in collaboration with the landscape architects at USC, the other research objective we wanted to talk about was what shade trees can be added to maximize heat mitigation or the cooling potential, and what is the basis for the selection. Like there are parameters like the leaf area density and the quantity of water that would be required to get these trees well established and sort of perform thermally as one might expect. And the other question was, what is the impact of shade tree spacing, location, and species on mitigating outdoor heat stress? So this study using NVMet, you can really detail out the CFD model with different materials, different shade trees. You can model. The last thing you want to do is put a bunch of generic tree models in this study, and not be able to quantify the heat mitigation potential of different tree species, which is kind of the objective here. And so the workflow essentially is you start off with a CFD model. You model the urban typology, the urban built form, the materials of the ground cover, and everything in NVMet spaces, and then you come up with a new tree inventory in collaboration with landscape architects, and you model those trees out in Albero, which is another application within the suite of NVMet sort of suite of tools. And so, yeah, this is the baseline model, which just has a 5% tree canopy cover. And the proposed model has a much higher tree canopy cover that's like at 18% at this stage. And then moving on to the simulation, you really want to pick out what analysis periods you want to analyze these results, conduct simulations for and analyze results, because these simulations do take ages to run. And really, you just want to pick out typical conditions like a mild day period, a mild period and a hot period to sort of quantify the heat mitigating potential of your cooling strategies. And then for the UTCI output, I obtained UTCI data at a pedestrian height of 1.2 meters. And then for the results, I'll be walking you through some custom graphics and how I quantified site-wide UTCI reduction. And so yeah, developing your tree inventory is very important because you really want to consider what kind of trees you want to, what kind of shade trees you want to add to your layout. These trees are typically trees that have a high shading potential. So they're dense, unlike a palm tree or something like a Platanus racemosa, which I believe was a sycamore tree. Yeah, it was a sycamore tree, which kind of sheds leaves in the fall. And And in the fall, so when it's August and September, and uh, you're still exposed to high levels of heat stress in LA because that's when temperatures are kind of really high. You really don't want to add deciduous trees or palm trees, which have a very low shading potential, because they're just not going to give you that UTCI reduction, because they just don't shade well. So the trees that we've selected were the African sumac, Australian willow, and oak trees, like evergreen holly oak trees. And these are kind of the parameters that I've used in the layout, from the spacing to the size, assuming that these are at a 20-year age. And the next step, like I mentioned, was picking out your analysis period. So for the mild, so I've picked out two periods for my analysis, which is a mild period spanning 20th to 22nd of August, and a typical hot period spanning 20th to 22nd September. And I'm not going to talk too much about how exactly I added this weather data into the simulation model, but I just want to share that you would need to have a spin-up period prior to running your simulations. Just basically this sort of a one-day period where you let your model get accustomed to the boundary conditions that you're going to simulate the rest of the analysis period for. And for the workflow, sorry, about the CFD output and results. And we met, so this study was done like 3 years ago. And so at that time, the results that NVMet spits out is basically these heat maps at regular class intervals. So like a 10-degree interval or whatever you pick out, which doesn't really give you an idea of what temperatures are within what ranges of heat stress, which don't really fall within within a regular class interval. For example, the site cold stress range is from 0 to 9 degrees, whereas the no thermal heat stress zone spans 9 to 26. So that's not something you can get out of NVMet readily. So that's something that I use Rhino and Grasshopper to get and sort of just get a visual of the correlation between high MRT due to direct shortwave radiation and UTCI distribution on site, due to a lack of shade. And so the bottom right images give you a visualization of what the MRT and UTCI levels look like on site, whereas this particular percentage site area under each UTCI heat stress zone gives you states sort of the site area that falls under different UTCI heat stress zones in quantitative terms. So this particular plot has been used to quantify the UTCI distribution at 12 noon, which is when the site sort of peaks in UTCI due to the highest levels of radiation at that time. And then so for the mild day results, this is again quantified at 1 hour of the day, which I believe was important, which was at noon, which is kind of important because that's when MRT peaks. And if you want to quantify the UTCI reduction due to shade, I believe like you should do it when conditions are extreme or at the peak. And so in this plot, you can see that you get more green areas because these areas in the building canyons have undergone a huge drop in UTCI. And so the percentage area that kind of drops from the moderate and strong heat stress zones to the no heat stress zone, it's about a 15% increase in the site area. And the percentage site area under the moderate and strong heat stress zones reduced by 6 and 9% respectively. So really just a snapshot of, how the UTCI has undergone a significant improvement in those building canyons, as well as stating it in quantitative terms. And this is also a result of shading patterns, the urban typology, which is those two-story residential structures, as well as shade tree, the MRT reduction under shade trees. So it's like a combined effect, and you don't really have to go into looking at heat maps for each of those variables separately. You can just sort of get a snap of the combined effect of all those sort of urban parameters on UTCI reduction rather. And so in a similar fashion, you can look at what the typical hot day results are at 12 noon. This is again, there is an additional 10% of the site area that has jumped from being in the very strong heat stress zone to the strong heat stress zone to the moderate heat stress zone. And the percentage area under the strong and very strong heat stress zones reduced by 6 and 4%, respectively. So these studies, these plots can really help you develop what kind of targets you want to establish for your UTCI studies. Do you want to go for do you want to add more cooling strategies that help you achieve a more significant increase in the site area that's under the moderate heat stress zone, for example. So you can add more cooling strategies. You can simulate more cooling strategies in NVMet until you meet your targets. And the targets that you set are basically something that would be site specific, because every site is different in that it has different densities, different vegetation, different sort of urban forms. And so the target, it's not just like a blanket, oh, I want to decrease the air temperature or the UTCI by 2 degrees Celsius. It's sort of very site specific. And using performance outcomes such as the site-wide UTCI and not just UTCI reduction at one particular grid cell will give you an idea of how your site is performing in terms of heat stress reduction at a site level and not just under one particular tree canopy or at one grid cell. And additional insights that I got from the study was when you look at other variables like the ambient air temperature reduction. Sorry. This is the data that I got from NVMet. And I just wanted to sort of share that it is shade that reduces UTCI by a lot, whereas the contribution of ambient air temperature reduction by evapotranspirative cooling by trees is quite limited. And it depends on numerous factors like wind speeds and direction. So as you can see on the plot in the middle, the bottom half of the site really doesn't experience much ambient air temperature reduction because the wind has kind of dissipated that air into the top half, I guess. And so further insights that I got that I sort of wanted to share was the spatial configuration of tree placement. Which is important. You want to maximize shade everywhere, and not just in the building canyons or where there's vegetation. So this obviously wouldn't apply to a site that's already developed. But for sites that are being designed, it would be good to maximize shade everywhere, especially over the heat retaining materials like asphalt and concrete, which is what's depicted in this plot in red are those areas that have heat retaining materials like asphalt and concrete. Whereas the same material that's kind of shaded by trees is at a much lower heat stress. And then again, you want to limit the heat retaining materials like asphalt and concrete, which could further enhance pedestrian thermal comfort and reduce the site area that is under the very strong heat stress zone as depicted in the figure above. And this is important because this sort of serves as a proxy for the usability and walkability in outdoor spaces. Um, um, yeah, so I mean, you really want to enhance sort of walkability and the use of outdoor spaces. And I feel like the red areas that are under a much higher heat stress zone would further expose these residents to a very harmful sort of a thermal environment, and maybe limit the use of these outdoor spaces because your core temperatures are being disrupted every time you kind of jump from the no heat stress zone to the heat stress zone, which is more disruptive, like the moderate and strong and very strong heat stress zones. And so to further apply these workflows, uh, for this site, for example, you might have a scenario 3, which talks about material alternatives to asphalt and concrete. And so replacing asphalt and concrete paving with natural materials like stone pavers or grass stone pavers, you might be able to get like a much bigger jump or a much more significant improvement in site-wide UTCI, using a combination of different strategies. And so this workflow and this software is very useful in determining the combined effect of different cooling strategies, as mentioned by the earlier presenters. And you can do that using these graphics and using this workflow and at a high level of granularity because the software has a ton of has a database that is rich in different materials and different types of vegetation. And so some conclusions I wanted to share were this study is using NVMet is not only useful in determining the effectiveness of different heat mitigation strategies, but I feel like this is the only way you can do it because a real life setup wouldn't be possible. Like a site with trees and without is not something that you can do realistically. And then secondly, ambient air temperature reduction due to shade trees is limited. Reduction in MRT under shade tree canopy brought about the greatest improvements in site-wide UTCI distribution. And this kind of stresses the need for shading, not necessarily vegetative shading, because that evapotranspirative cooling component is just not a significant contributor to reducing UTCI. And lastly, ground cover materials have a profound impact on UTCI at the pedestrian height. As depicted in the figure in the right, UTCI is greatest where heat retaining materials like asphalt and concrete make up most of the ground cover. So it's important to limit these materials and assess the potential for improvement in UTCI distribution using natural materials and sort of state the improvement of those combined strategies in quantitative terms. And so that concludes my presentation, and I'll open the floor for some questions now.
Thank you, Krupa. That was a great presentation. Let's see, we have some questions for you. What is the approximate age of the proposed trees that were modeled?
It is 20 years.
Okay. Did you do any urban level cost analysis for the implementing strategies as well?
No, but that would be one of the objectives that should be considered alongside other metrics as well.
Looks like there are no further questions. Thank you so much. Let me just quickly share my screen back. All right, so before we wrap, a big thank you to our presenters. We hope you enjoyed sharing your projects, and we are so glad that IBPSA-USA could give you this platform to showcase your work. And thanks to our audience for supporting our students and emerging professionals along the way. We have got some more events coming up, so make sure to check out IBPSA-USA's website for what's next. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to catch our today's recording and explore other webinars too. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.